Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the Wrist Cheese Radio Podcast. We are on episode 33 here in your home for the horological hot takes, the taboo topics, and the often unpopular watch opinions. I'm your co-host, Bro Dinky. With me, as always, is my friend Schmidt. Schmidt, what's shaking, buddy?
Nothing much, man. Another week back to back recording pods. So I'm happy to be here, getting ready to have a ramped up, busy travel schedule. So I'm glad we're able to squeeze an episode in before I hit the road again. But excited, man. A lot of crazy things going on in the world of watches. Some people sneaking out some releases that we'll touch on here in a minute, but things are going great. How about with you? Did you have a good Memorial Day weekend?
Yeah, I'm finally recovering from all the psychological trauma and the smell of shellfish, so that's good.
Did the lobsters cry?
I don't know. I just whacked them. They're dead by the time they get to me.
You don't hear just a boiling pot of cries from the
Yeah.
other room, just nonstop.
Yeah, I mean,
The shrill screaming of the steam escaping under their shells.
no, I can't say I do. Other than that, just been losing a lot of sleep because the Rangers are doing big things in the playoffs. So exciting times here in New York. Teams are all playing pretty well, which is a rarity
Okay.
recently. So that's
Okay.
nice. Yeah, that's kind of it at the moment. We got some interesting stuff on the docket this week, I think. But first, as you said, there were kind of a lot of releases recently.
Yeah, there have been,
And
which has been
I
exciting.
didn't realize until we started talking about it before, because I had a few coming into this, and then you're like, what about this one and this one and this one? And I was like,
Well, I mean,
damn, this
there's a lot of time lapse that happens when you're clubbing, lobsters for rich people. So, I mean, it is one of those things. Sometimes you catch it, sometimes you don't.
Yeah. So let's kick it off. I think one that's been on sort of everybody's radar today, and it seems to be pretty well received from what I've seen. I know from talking about it, neither you nor I are specifically crazy about it, but this Oris Holstein 2022 situation, it's a world time. Certainly interesting. You get interesting points for that.
I mean, the complication is nice,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like a travel timer, world timer, or whatever you want to call it. I just the thing is that this watch is designed to look like a watch that came out in the 90s and in the 2000s.
Was that a particularly strong period of design for watches?
No, it was certainly not. And I know we're not going to help our case here, trying to get a pink dial watch for real men wear pink, but I'm just not a fan of this full steel collection. This is something that came out a while ago. This is a relaunch for this collection, and some people are all on the train for this watch. I'm one of those people that's like, you know what? I'm glad the train left the station because I'm just not here for it. Like I saw this watch, I thought somebody was posting a throwback to the 2000s, to the late 90s, an era of just arguably really bad watches in terms of style. Now, in terms of complications and movements and all that stuff, the 90s and 2000s were fantastic. But how they incorporated that style into the creation of the watches, it missed the mark. And we've touched on this before. This is one of those watches that immediately just looks like it's dated. It just
does.
like it just feels like it's trying to be futuristic and in tune with what the future is going to hold, and it's just missing the mark. And I have to say, Oris has been on a roll.
Really have
lately. This one just isn't doing it for me. So I don't know, man.
I mean, I guess you can get away with it. I know it's a very small limited run. I think it was like 250 or something like that.
Yeah, it is.
I know you can get kind of cute with stuff like that. Like, obviously, it's not for everybody. Kind of similar to the U50 Pro I was talking about. It's only 150 pieces. So even if that 10 o'clock crown doesn't go over huge, like, not a big deal. 150 pieces. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, is it like a big faux pas? No. And we get it. It's a reissue, and it's kind of harkening back to something that was sort of like a bit of a marvel in its own right. But like you said, it almost reminds me of sort of like those aesthetics, like the Brosnan Bond Seamaster, right? That is very 90s.
Yes, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like you look at that and you could just tell it came from the 90s. And I love the Bond Seamaster, but it's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's why Omega, when they decided to redo it in 2018, you pay tribute to that particular piece, but you've improved it to make it look modern, you know? And this watch, it feels like all the old school Oruses that I see on eBay when I'm like scrolling for watches late at night.
Yeah, those
And it
old
just like,
pointer dates I look at.
yeah, and it just like pops up on my feed, or like the old school like Oris divers before they came out with the Aquas line. Like
Yeah.
it's just like they're nice, but they're just old. They feel dated. And this is just one of those watches that certainly does that for me. Now, again, like you said, it's a super small production run. It's 250 pieces. It's a 36.5 millimeter case.
Does it look thick to you? I have no grasp
I
on the thickness. It looks
I,
thick, but
I
I can't
don't
make it out.
know.
I was looking for a number, I couldn't find one.
Yeah, on their website it's not listed either. It just says 36.5 is the diameter. I don't know. I can't imagine it's too thick, but again, I haven't seen a full steel in person. It looks like it has very long lugs for its kind of case dimensions, because they're almost like hooded, like they
Yeah,
come
it's got
out.
some protrusion going on.
Yes. So it'll be interesting to see how this fits on everyone's wrist, especially those who may have smaller ones. Um, the Oris Bear's on the back there, which is kind of cool. He's kind of like in a little like early aviator type wardrobe thing going on. But it's an interesting watch. It's got a lot of buttons, one on either side of the case. You got the big crown. So it'll be interesting to see who loves this watch. There's people who've already been raving about it. I am not one of those people. So this is a miss for me.
And again, I think that's okay. Like it seems like no matter what, well, first of all, let me backtrack on that. Having a social presence and a podcast is quite the interesting double-edged sword, because no matter what you say, whether you like something or don't like something, there's always somebody who finds your inbox to try to tell you how much of a D-bag you are.
Yeah, for sure.
What I would like to clarify, I guess, is that people need to realize that, like, when I think about a watch like this, I'm thinking about it from my point of view as if I would consider buying this.
Yes.
Like, I'm not just
Absolutely.
out here,
Absolutely.
I'm not out here just running down the specs and giving you like a review of, oh, it has this and this. No. I'm like, would I buy this personally? Like, does this connect with me and my tastes? Like, would I consider going after this? And for me, it's a no. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's a bad watch. That doesn't mean I don't like the company. It doesn't mean I have a personal vendetta against anybody. Right.
No, exactly. I mean, again, and we've talked about Oris at great length before. I have a Diver 65. I love the watch. Like I said, it needs a service, but it's just that time, But we talked about the Pro Pilot X that they just came out with earlier at Watches and Wonders with the pastel dials. That's a cool watch. We've talked about the Big Crown before. You and I both love that watch. I would want to add one to my collection. There's a lot of cool pieces that Oris has been putting out recently that I think is really, really nice, and especially based around the new 400 caliber series. Like, that is really cool stuff. With the technology that they're pumping out is great. This watch for me, and again, it's probably why it's a limited edition of 250 pieces, is just because they know that this is going to be a little bit more polarizing. Some people are going to love it. A lot of people are probably not going to be on board with it, and that's okay. 250 pieces is a true limited edition. It'll go fairly quickly to those who really want it, and the rest of us will just be left buying divers. That's fine.
Right. All right. Moving on. Did you want to throw one out? I went with the first one.
Yeah, man. There's been a lot of cool stuff, and today we're recording on the 1st of June, which is fantastic because we've had some new watches that got released today. Specifically, one of the watches that I'm really, really keen on myself, which is the new Longines Ultrachron. I think most people who are probably listening to this right now are probably familiar with this watch, especially by the time it airs. But it's a very, very, very exciting new type of Longines that's going to be indicative of maybe the future direction of the brand, which I think is great. So Longines, part of Swatch Group, they just came out with this new watch. It's a relaunch of the Ultrachron, something that they came out with in the 70s. And basically, this was a diver that was featuring a high beat movement. And according to Longines and their In their history department, essentially, Longines is one of the first people to make a high beat dive watch, and it's specifically called the Ultrachron. They had an entire movement series, collection series that featured this movement, and they're bringing it back. But this time, they're upping the ante a little bit. Not only are they relaunching the timepiece, it is an homage in many ways, according to their head of product development, because it's not an exact replication of the original, but it's an homage to that piece, but featuring modern tech. It's specifically a new modern movement. So it's an Ultrachron high beat movement. It has a silicon balance spring. It has components that are amagnetic. So you're going to have an anti-magnetic escape wheel, anti-magnetic pallet fork, which are very important for magnetic resistance. And then you're going to have a new certification. So not only is this COSC certified, it's going to be certified through an independent agency known as Time Lab, based in, I believe, Geneva. And essentially, Time Lab is measuring this particular watch to the COSC standards. But the caveat is here that they're going to take those COSC standards and test the completed final assembly watch. COSC will only test the movement. This is kind of replicating what Omega is doing. Its bigger brother with Metos, right? They test the watch movement at COSC. They certify it as a chronometer. Then it goes into fully encasing at Omega, and then it goes out to Metos for testing of the entire completed timepiece as a functional watch. The only thing missing, of course, would be a strap or a bracelet. So Longines is kind of replicating this. Now they're not testing, I don't think, for any type of anti-magnetic stuff like Omega is doing. But the fact that another watch brand, at a lower price point, is coming out with a high beat movement with newer technology, with amagnetic components, and is now certifying its watches to a higher range, which is now an ultra chronometer standard, it's pretty impressive. And the price point is very surprising for all of you people who are kind of maybe teetering on the fence of getting a Grand Seiko because you want a high beat movement. This starts at 3,500 US,
not bad.
Which it's not bad, man. It's a really, really nice looking watch. It's kind of vintage, kind of still modern, but the tech inside of this, I imagine we're going to see this kind of working its way through the rest of the Longines collection. I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, I definitely like the old look. Looks like a lot of divers that I regularly kind of scout on eBay late at night. Bracelet looks really good. I really like the red accent. I think it looks great. Obviously, the text is going to be really cool. The name sounds a little bit like a Transformers villain.
Doesn't it?
The Ultrachron. But that's not a knock. It's just funny to me. I'm like, oh yeah.
No, totally. I know, but it was funny. So I was watching the video, kind of recapping this with our friend Alexander Lintz, and he was sitting down with the head of product development at Longines, and they were pronouncing this, and the way that they say this in French is just it sounds so good, but it's like it's nothing that I could ever pronounce.
Yeah.
But basically, Ultrachron is just the abbreviated version for ultra chronometer, in case that was not clear, because that is the new standard certification for Longines, ultra chronometer. So there you go. There's your abbreviation. But they were like Ultrachron, and I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna butcher that, and I did. I just did.
But yeah, 3,500, not too bad. And I think Longines is still a brand you can get at least somewhat of a discount on in stores. So maybe you're not paying all of that. Either way, still pretty cool. Another one I had, I mean, I think it's hard to ignore the AP Rainbow. That was kind of on everybody's radar today.
And it's what 37 mil?
I think. Either way, I'm not going to get one, but I mean, it looks pretty good. It does. I mean, I the dial doesn't look terrible for what it's doing. Like, it doesn't look like a kid's toy too much, but it kind of reminds me of Cars in like 2002. Not the movie, like actual cars. Like, that was when I started driving a car. Was in around 2002. Like the Fast and the Furious trend, like this is what's going on with watches now. Is you're seeing like all these things like chameleon paint and like these like funny trends that used to be like what 18-year-old kids do to their cars are now coming out in watch dials and cases and things like that. It's just kind of funny to me. Different metals, and don't get me wrong, I was an 18-year-old kid. I put Euro taillights on my Civic and Angel headlights. All right, I was
Oh
there.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was there
Okay,
with
now
everybody
now I
else.
know where you're going with this. Now I know where you're going with this. I got you. Okay, that makes sense.
I'm just. It
It's
reminds me of Too Fast, Too Furious specifically, where Ludacris has like his like mod shop, and it's just got all these redonkulously painted stuff. Like that is what's going on. Like those are the dials I'm seeing now.
yeah. We're one degree removed from Exhibit coming out and pimping your ride. Like this is, and again, this is kind of like that chameleon paint job, right?
That's
Like where
that's the feeling I got from it. I was like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
chameleon
Because it
paint.
kind of transitions as you move it with the light, which is pretty cool.
Right.
And I think that they did it, if I'm not mistaken, I think that they did it with like laser engraving. So they were able to like engrave the dial, the tapisserie pattern somehow.
Yeah, the
To
texturing is beautiful.
yeah, it looks awesome. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Now, I'm not gonna rock a 34 millimeter Royal Oak, not to mention because it's a limited edition that I will never see, and it's gonna be 300 pieces, it looks like.
Good luck.
So, yeah, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, I would imagine. So there you go. It's designed in collaboration with Catalina Bucci. I'm not sure who that is, but she
Ah,
looks like
yes.
oh, she's an Italian jeweler. So there you go. For all of those people who don't know who she is, inclusive of myself, she's an Italian jeweler, and she does a lot of stuff with looks like rainbow stones or colorways, which makes sense with the dial. So there you go.
Okay.
You know, for us average lay people out here. So last one that I got that I was really happy to see kind of dropped over the weekend, and a good buddy of mine who on occasion listens to the podcast because he's a very busy person, was able to get kind of hands-on with this because he did the product launch photos for this particular timepiece. So I was very, very happy to see his work getting out there, becoming more mainstream. So shout out to you, buddy. You know who you are. But anyway, um, Hamilton dropped a new launch of their watches, specifically in the khaki navy series, which is the khaki navy Frogman. So this is an update of a watch that they've had for a few years in the collection. It kind of came out. People, initially kind of gravitated towards it because it was for Hamilton kind of more of a beefy dive watch. The problem is it used kind of the vintage style like canteen crown system.
Right.
So you had, this bigger crown that locked over top of a smaller crown. And I'll be honest with you, I was really wanting to buy this watch back in the day. The problem was you could never move like the canteen out of the way enough to physically like operate the crown well. So it kind of had a design flaw. It was really cool in like scope of like how it looked and the aesthetics, but when it came to actually like the functionality of this watch, it was just not there. So they came out with a new version. There's I think a collection of 4 watches in total, that are just it's super super cool. So they've eliminated the canteen locking mechanism, but it looks like in some ways that the crown actually, um maybe like the crown guard kind of articulates with the crown as you're using it, which would be very very cool. But you get a black dial version on black rubber strap. You got kind of a metal bezeled version on the bracelet, also with a black dial on an OD green rubber strap, so kind of more of a military aesthetic. And then lastly, my favorite version, which is a completely blacked out version with just the minute and the tip of the second hand in orange. The rest of the dial is in black superluminova. It's so ghosted. It's so murdered out. It looks amazing. I am so excited for this watch because I cannot wait to see them in person. I think they're going to look awesome.
Yeah, that black loom is certainly sweet on those.
I mean, it gives me kind of, Omega 300 meter vibes, like the ceramic black ones.
I still want to see
Obviously,
that one in person. That all black Seamaster.
I've seen it once, and in the midst of seeing it, it was promptly purchased because somebody already had the money ready to go, and it certainly was not me. But I have seen one in person, and it is still to this day a pretty elusive unicorn in the collection that is Omega, according to people that I know. But regardless, a very cool watch nonetheless. But I think this Hamilton, if you can't get something like that, this is a very cool piece that is, it's edgy, it's sporty, it looks cool. And I think, for I think $1,200 US, you're getting a pretty cool watch that has a great pedigree. It's got a good style, and I think it'll be a really, really cool watch to wear every day.
Yeah, I don't think it's one you have to worry too much about. You kind of just throw it on and go, right?
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it.
Last one for me, sort of a fun choice here. Um, Maurice Lacroix came out with a
Oh
new
yeah,
diver, right? And I
yeah.
sent this to you, and I said, because I think this is going to cause at least a few watch people an aneurysm. Is this a Rolex copy or is it a AP copy? Because it's a green diver, which, as we know, automatically makes it a Rolex copy, but
Yes.
it looks like an AP offshore. So what is it? I'm going to need a ruling. So, person who usually tells me I'm a jackass in my inbox, feel free to weigh in on that one this week. Um, but I need to know.
I don't know even know if I have an answer for this. I mean, we've talked about the Icon diver before.
I do think it looks pretty good though.
I mean, and that's what I said last time when we were talking about the Icon, because we had talked about different watches that kind of have that same aesthetic in one of the earlier podcast episodes, and we brought up the Icon because it has that royal oak, it has that kind of weird kind of design to it, but it's obviously a Maurice Lacroix, right? And then I know that I had mentioned this the diver version because you know a few people that I know that are into collecting watches. They have this watch. Now I'm not a Maurice Lacroix fan, and since I own one, I've sought out buying one, but I have respect for what they're putting out. And specifically for me, I think the Icon Diver is probably the best looking version of their collection that they have. And this one's a pretty good choice because I think it's 39 or 38 millimeters, which is a fantastic size. We're already seeing watches kind of coming down universally in size. The color of green is very good because it's not like Rolex green, but
Yep.
it's not quite as dark as like the Omega Seamaster green. So it's got a little bit of a color play there. And I just, I think aesthetically it's gonna be really nice to wear. So for people who aren't, maybe dead set diehard watch collectors and they just want something that's gonna look nice, people are gonna notice it and they're gonna enjoy wearing it. I think this is a fantastic choice.
Did you see the ocean plastic ones they released not that long ago?
I did, and I like them. There's just not a single colorway that I was in love with myself.
Most
So
people dropped hate on them because I think they're quartz and they're like $700. I want to say.
I mean, but there's a lot of quartz watches that are in that price range.
Hey,
If
that
you
was
don't
the
like it,
that
if
was
you
the
don't like it, buy
complaint.
a Seiko.
Yeah,
Like,
that was the complaint when I said that I enjoyed what they were doing. Ew, quartz, too much money, yada yada.
I mean, here's the thing: is like I know a lot of people that sold them. I see them all over social media now. Whether Maurice Lacroix gave them away, I don't think so. But I mean, I've seen a lot of people post this watch. I see it everywhere. Um, it's just a cool, fun watch, and it's a watch that's not supposed to take itself too seriously.
If you couldn't tell by the color palette.
I mean, my God, it's literally like the rainbow threw up. So, I mean, it's cool. I mean, that's just what it is. It's just a fun, cool watch. It's like sometimes it doesn't have to be serious, guys. Come on. Like, that's why the moon swatch is still dominating the world. It
Can we
doesn't always have to be fun.
can we talk about that for a minute? People are coming out with Moonswatch articles now.
Yes. Still,
I I don't get it.
it's because it's that awesome.
Yeah, but you missed the boat by a long shot.
I mean, but they're coming out with articles about it now because it's still something that's at the majority of a lot of people's mind. I
For
mean, every
me,
time I turn around, the boys at Wrist Check Pod are doing a reel or doing some type of story, and it's got a moon swatch in it. It just makes me more and more jealous and salty that I don't have one.
I don't know. It just feels like this was an assignment that was due 2 months ago. That
I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think also people are trying to really understand how significant of an impact this really was for the community, because it completely changed the entire context of watch collecting and watches in general. So I mean, it's insane what it did. And that's why I think people are still talking about it, because it's a conversation that's still being had. You know,
well,
people
that
are still
news
looking for it.
was
People
supposed to
still
be
want it.
available online, and it isn't.
I know. And you had one, and then you gave it away.
That's what I do.
Oh, you never told me where you got that one in the first place.
I sourced it through
I got you.
channels.
I got you. Okay. We'll just leave it at that, through channels.
I have a particular set of skills.
Yes, I know. All right. You make me so jealous.
I blackmail people. That's what I do.
I have a particular set of not skills that allow me to fail at finding watches. Oh,
All right. Well,
ready. I was ready. I was so ready in Miami to get one, and then they're like, "No, no, we sold out of everything." I was like, "I, I just called." That's a story for another day. So we've already talked quite a bit at length about what we've been doing so far today. Watches, all new releases and things, but we had another topic. So, bro, why don't you lead us into what we were kind of wanting to discuss about today's topic?
well, I think the discussion of all these newer watches kind of leads into it perfectly. In that, from my own experience, a lot of times either I'll be, sitting on the couch doing the rabbit hole search on eBay or Watch Recon or whatever, or when I'm kind of hunting down what's on my radar, sometimes I take a little step back and I just sort of think about my own collection, sort of what I'm doing, what I have, where I'm going. And I don't know, sometimes I just take a look at it and I'm like, am I in too deep at this point? Like I like to sort of give a self-assessment of like, am I over collecting? Like that's sort of a
Yeah.
term that I've sort of been throwing around recently. Is like because well, like can you over collect? I think a lot of people would say no, but I think you can. Like I think from
Yeah.
a logical perspective, I know first of all it's not a cheap hobby. You can get in deep very quick. Even if
Oh
you
yeah,
play
for
in the
sure.
shallow end, you can get in deep very fast, right?
Yeah, and
Like
it's addictive too, which is the worst part.
yeah, that hit when your package gets delivered. There's a few things like it, right?
That dopamine rush is like
That's what I
boom,
mean,
baby. Where's my box cutter?
right? So sort of how much is too much, and at what point are we over collecting? I guess.
Yeah. Hmm. What's your take on it?
I mean, I definitely think you can over collect. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, things add up fast. Even cheap watches, you don't realize. I mean, $100 here, $200 there.
I mean, it's
It
like
adds up
anything.
quick.
Yeah, it's like anything. It's like, being addicted to shopping, right? You're like, oh, what's a $20 Amazon package here? Oh, I'll get it on Prime next week. And oh, there's this new deal that came up and it's $50. And like, all of a sudden you're like, I spent $3,000 on Amazon in 2 weeks. Like, how did this happen?
Well, that's what I'm
Right? Like,
saying, right? Like you, like put it this way: so if you had a $500-$600 car payment a month, right, you'd be sitting in something like a BMW.
right. Exactly.
So not that you necessarily spend 500-600 on a watch every month, but like, all right, you buy a $900 watch one month, you buy a
Hmm.
$200 watch the next month, right? You buy a Joker little Casio $60 or whatever, $100 next month. Okay, oh man, this just dropped. Oh, it's a limited. I'm gonna snag it. 1,800. Next thing you know, you average it out over the 12 months of the year, and you're like, damn, I really spent like $800 a month on watches.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you,
Yeah. I mean, certainly from the financial aspect, I think that there's certainly a financial aspect of being over collecting, right? Like just like it just from a monetary standpoint, like you get to the point where you start hoarding. And I think at every collector at one stage or another goes to this point where they're like, I have too much stuff. It's not my taste anymore. It was maybe at one time. and you start to reevaluate the collection and you start to let pieces go, right? You start to like, okay, let me thin the herd a little bit. Let me move some stuff out to make ways for some new stuff, or let me move some stuff out because I just need to funnel myself back down to a more manageable size, right? I mean, I look at my watch box, every once in a while, I'm like, man, I got a lot of watches, and I got watches I don't wear, like period.
Yeah.
But I'm just not one of those people that's like, I'm gonna sell it. Like, what am I gonna sell it for? I got like vintage stuff in there that needs a service. I got some other stuff. It's like, even if I did sell it, like, what am I going to sell for? $30, like
Yeah.
$100? Like, it's not even worth it. It's more cost and time myself to do it than it is actually just to keep it. You know what I mean? But I think certainly you can get to a point of over collecting because you start to hoard things. It's straps, it's accessories, it's watch rolls, it's whatever, NATO straps, whatever. It doesn't matter. You just get to this point where now it's obsessive, and you have extras and extras and extras and extras of the same types of things. And I don't know when you stop, because like now, I mean, we just talked about new watches that dropped, right?
Yep.
A couple of those watches I could actually see myself personally owning. But add that to the long list of watches that dropped 6 months ago that I still want.
Right.
Like I, I don't know when it stops.
Yeah, and I feel like the way collecting works, and don't get me wrong, I know a lot of people sell things, and believe it or not, the cost of selling takes a little chunk out of what you're getting back. It's not like, oh, well, I sold it for what I bought it for. Every time you're buying a box, you're buying shipping supplies,
Correct.
right? You have to go to and from the post office at
It's your
$5 a
time as
gallon.
well.
Right. Like it's not some easy zero sum game to, oh, I bought it and I sold it for the same, I'm good, whatever. Like it's still a cost, right?
Yeah,
There's
for
still a
sure.
cost to that. But I just feel like part of collecting and part of all these drops of popular watches, no matter how cool and or maybe cheap they are, they add up. Like when you were talking about hoarding, the first thing that popped in my mind was Timex Q. I feel like
Yeah.
everybody probably has one in their watch box, just kind of sitting there ticking away.
Yeah. I mean,
I'd be curious to know how many people wear them regularly. Not that
yeah.
that defines your collection or anything, but I would like to think that if I own something, I'm going to give it some run.
Yeah. I mean, my Q is one of those watches that I have to make a point to wear. It's like I'm not going to be like, oh, this is my everyday watch. No, because I'm wearing a Speedmaster. Like that's what I wear every day for the most part, right? Especially since I've got it, last year. It's the one I keep constantly wear. I just don't. I never really take it off. But despite that fact, like when I have something like a Q or something that's kind of like I have a Seiko Patty Turtle, like fantastic watch. People would be lucky enough to have one, but it's not a watch I wear regularly. I find occasions to wear, like Memorial Day, right? I decided we were going to take my daughter to the pool. I wore my Seiko Patty 62 Moss. It's a watch I probably haven't worn maybe 2 or 3 times in the last year. And I was like, this is a perfect colorway. It's a
Yep.
perfect way to celebrate the occasion. Like, why not? Like, when else am I going to wear this? So pull it out of the box, wind it up, let it rip, and here we go. So it just gets to a point where like you have to like make the decision to do it. But it's also kind of that razor's edge is like, is it too much now? Because should you have a more manageable collection where maybe you have a different watch for every single day of the week, and that's kind of the extent of the collection?
Or if I have to purposely make time for a watch, like, does it really belong?
Yeah.
If I
I
have
mean,
to
it's,
go out of my way to find an excuse to put it on,
yeah, it's a very valid point. Now, I will say this in my defense, kind of the nature of my own business is what I do for work makes it very difficult to wear all my watches all the time just because I'm constantly having to take them off, constantly having to switch them out. And it's just because of the nature of, doing what I do that, I'm not always constantly wearing a watch. So it makes the time between watches a little bit more spread out. Not that I don't want to be wearing a watch. It's just sometimes I physically cannot do it. Right. So that's when, for me, the watch has become a little bit more purposeful. But I think about other people that have, like, like a typical 9 to 5 job, right? Like somebody is literally going to wake up in the morning, get some breakfast, get coffee, get dressed for work, drive to work, sit at a cubicle, type on a computer all day, and then come home at 5 or 6 o'clock, right? That person can wear whatever the hell watch that they want forever.
Right.
Right. Like you and I, we have jobs that are demanding. Like you're over here just crushing lobster skulls like every single weekend. Like this is crazy. You have to be very cognizant about your watch because you're not going to wear something. You're like, I'm gonna get this watch stinky with lobster guts. Like I'm probably not going to wear my Grand Seiko on a suede leather strap.
Right.
Right. Like, so you have to be more cognizant based on what you're doing. But, somebody who works from home or, is traveling, doing a very, business type job where maybe it's not so demanding that your watch really matters. I don't, I think people like that have a better opportunity to wear their watches constantly. You know what I mean? Like if I had a 9 to 5 job and worked in an office, I'd wear a different watch every single day because I could. There would be nothing stopping me.
Yeah, I would say I certainly collect with a little bit of that aspect built in. Like when I saw these little Seiko Solars, I was like, this is an ideal watch for me.
Yeah.
It's always going to be ticking. I could wear it at work without a care in the world.
And beat the crap out of it.
And it is going to be great on rubber, which is my preferred strap because I can just wash it underwater.
Yeah. I mean, you still have to sterilize stuff in the kitchen. It's hot. Yeah. It's sweaty. It's
and I can't
gross.
lie. NATO straps are just doomed to get stained with either, anything tomatoey, blood.
Yeah.
Any kind
Food.
of a brown sauce. Yeah, you're done. Like NATO straps are just not worth it. Same with obviously your leathers. So like bracelet you can get away with, but there's a lot of little crevices and
yeah.
I really don't like when my bracelets look dirty.
Yes.
Like when you got to toothbrush them because the in between the links is like a little crusty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not so about that. So rubber straps, I've got like a really large collection of Tropics now and different Uncle Seikos and stuff like that I work in all over the place. But that's kind of my go-to. But I sort of think about that when I buy watches, is that like, would I be comfortable wearing this to work or, roughhousing with the kids in the
exactly
little water table outside they have,
Yeah, I mean, like that's what we do. Like again, I was taking my daughter to the pool. Like I'm not gonna wear the craziest grand complication watch to do that. Like I'm gonna put on my Seamaster. I'm gonna put on my 62 Moss. I'm gonna put on something, and I'm gonna go because I'm gonna use it. Every single time that I've gone diving, I've worn my Seamaster 300 on every single dive that I've ever done, and we're talking well over 100 dives now.
Jeez,
but I don't baby it. Like it looks scratched to hell. It's beat up. It's dented. It's used, but it's because I know it's going to be dependable and do the job. But the same thing is true when you think about a watch like that. Like I know that there's certain circumstances in my job that I can't wear all the watches that I want to wear all the time. And same thing with you. You have to be cognizant about what you are wearing and when and how you're wearing it. Right. Like, I mean, you could probably wear your Grand Seiko to work, but you're going to put it on a rubber. You're going to put it on something like that. And not to say that you would do it, but you could if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
I just, I'm not going to cover that bad boy in lobster guts.
No, definitely don't want to damage that Zeratsu polishing on some dumb surface that I don't
yeah,
need to.
All the stainless steel prep tables everywhere. Right. It's like, that's the other thing too.
That's my paper pushing watch.
That's the other thing that nobody understands about like commercial kitchens. Like there's just nothing but steel.
Everything is metal.
Everything is metal. It's like you just bump it and you're like, oh, it's not. It's like, oh God, I have destroyed this lug chamfer. It is done. Like oh man, send my watch to LA Watchworks and have them laser weld my stuff back together. Oh, it's bad. It's bad. But no, I think getting back to kind of what we are talking about, I think you can certainly over collect. I think um I think it's kind of something that's different for everybody, like once you hit that stage, you know. But like for me, I always want new stuff. Like
I think everybody does.
I
Part
mean,
of the nature of the beast.
I've been wearing this Speedmaster for a year now, or close to a year now, and I've loved every single minute of it. It's been a fantastic timekeeper. It's spot on. I think it's 2 seconds a day. Like it is fantastic. But I always look and I was like, you know what? It's not a Seamaster 300 meter. It's not, this Ultracron. It's not a Longines Legend Diver. Like there's so many other things that I constantly keep wanting to add to the collection that I don't know. Maybe I will at some point. Maybe I should just offload some stuff and then buy something. I don't know. But selling is not really my bag.
Yeah, and sort of what we were talking about before is that I guess that practicality is something you lose when you're in that over collecting phase, right? You sort of make excuses in your head for, oh, I'll wear this for certain activities, or I can wear this when I do this. And like,
Yep.
a guy like me, I really have no use for a true dress watch. I
Yeah.
just don't have one. I don't have a use for it.
Yeah.
So telling myself, oh, I'll wear this when I dress up is like it's just a fallacy that I'm trying
Yeah,
to
it's a
convince
lie.
myself
It's a
of.
lie that we tell ourselves.
Right. So I'm just trying to justify myself making a purchase, and I'll catch myself doing that time to time, and I usually make an adjustment. I'm like, no, this is a bad idea. I just want this because it's new and shiny.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well,
But
I mean, that's the problem. That's the good thing and the problem with watch collecting is there's always something new and shiny that's going to come down the pipe, and these brands keep pumping out cool stuff that makes us want to buy it, and it just keeps adding to the long list of priorities of whatever you want to add to your collection next, and that's my big problem. There's always something new that's coming out that I want and that I have to have, and it just keeps getting added to the list. So we'll see.
well, I'll throw you an interesting pickle I got myself into mentally recently. Is that for a long time I've wanted something precious metal y, something in the gold, rose gold, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And like I said, I really just don't have a use for a dress watch. And to have a solid gold watch for what they cost sitting and rotting my box would really just be
Sad.
sad. Exactly. So this got me thinking of something I had never ever even considered before because it just seemed like an automatic no. But like, is that the ideal spot for maybe something in like the gold capped realm? Because I'm never gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna wear it often enough to justify a solid metal, precious metal watch. But a gold, whatever you want to call it, gold cap, gold build, whatever watch that probably doesn't cost nearly as much, but still looks pretty badass, might be more excusable, which is something that I've never ever considered because I'm always like, well, why would I get a capped watch when I can just get a solid watch? It's much cooler.
Yeah, I mean the only justification for this would be if you're getting a modern gold capped watch, like something like a Tudor, right? Like a Tudor, two tone Daytona or something
Yeah.
like that. Okay, that makes sense because it's a Tudor. It's going to be good. Now, if you go vintage, stay away from it with a 10-foot pole, just because a lot of those platings were done over not so great materials.
Yeah.
Like you had a lot of like base metals that weren't steel, things like that. So over time, just corrosion eats that stuff away. It exposes it to the elements. The cases are corroded. You can't fix them. It's a pain in the butt. Now, as far as I understand, the gold capping that Tudor's doing is over steel. So I mean, you're not going to have so much of an issue with that, you're getting other components too that are solid gold. Like I know the bezels are on the S&Gs, like the bezel rings themselves are solid gold. The Daytona has the pushers in the crown that are
Right. The
solid gold.
crown, I was going to say.
So you have those components. So if you're going to go with that and you're flirting with that idea, yeah, go that way. I think that would be a cool way to do it. But other than that, I don't know of another brand that is doing gold capping that is high quality enough to do it. Right. And just so everyone understands the distinction, right? When you gold plate something, basically you're attracting a pigmentation of gold to a material, right? It's adhering on a molecular level.
I
You're
believe it
literally
is the redox reaction,
okay. There you go for all
oxidation
your short.
reduction. I believe.
Okay, so there you go. So usually, for my understanding, you charge the material with one thing, you charge the gold material with another thing, and they attract to each other and they're deposited. And it's a thin layer. Typically, over the history, it's been about like 20 microns or something like that of gold that's deposited over top, but it can scratch off, it can wear off. When you're taking something and you're gold capping it, you're literally taking a layer of gold and you're moving it or bending it around a material. So it's literally a solid layer that's been like laid over top, right? So think of it like the top of a pie crust, right? Like you're laying it over the pan and it's covering the entirety of the pie before you trim off the excess, right?
It's
Like
like when you
that's
dip
kind of
something
the
in
idea.
chocolate.
Exactly. You're depositing a full layer on it. So if you go that way, doing a modern gold capping, that's a way to go. Gold filling, gold plating, all of that stuff, PVD, DLC, I'm not a huge fan of just because it is likely and prone to wear.
It
So,
was it was an interesting it was an interesting place to work in a type of watch that I had never ever
which one were you thinking about?
nothing is specific. I was just thinking about how badly I wanted something in actual gold, but then I was
But
like,
here's my caveat to this, and maybe this is where we'll leave our listeners. Is it something that if you buy it, you're gonna resent it for not buying the thing you actually want?
I mean, that's always a question.
Because for me, that is always the question I ask myself. Am I settling? And if I'm settling, should I just keep holding out for what I actually want or make the mental decision that this is how it's going to be? Because that was my biggest advice to anybody when I was selling watches. I said, if we ever got into the scenario where we were between two watches and one was more expensive than the other, but that's the one the client, really wanted. I could tell that they wanted it. A lot of times I would tell them and say, look, this is the one that I know you want. I can read it. I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in your body language. Like this is the one that you want. But this one will be an equally good option for you. The problem is what I don't want you to do is make the decision here now to buy this one because it's less expensive or because of this extra amount of reason when you really want the other one. Because ultimately what's going to happen is you're not going to wear it because you don't really love it. You're not in love with it in the point where you want to put it on every single day. And there's going to grow a level of resentment for that particular piece. And it's just going to sit in the watch box. All right. That's what I tell everybody. Like, if it takes more time, if it takes, more effort, fine. Do that. Because ultimately you're going to love wearing that watch because it's going to mean more. So if that means you hold out and you buy that Sedna Speedy and maybe you only wear it a couple times, cool. But I would here's the way that I'd look at it. If you bought something like that, knowing you'd probably wear it all the time.
See, that's a more of a sporty watch, though. I would wear that probably every single day.
Yeah, and that's the thing that if it was me knowing what you talked about and what you've told me offline, I mean that's the watch to get. Period. So if you getting something that's gold capped or two tone or whatever would be a concession for that, if you're mentally okay with it, sure, go for it. But if you're going to resent it or potentially resent not really getting the real thing that you want, I wouldn't do it.
And now I think that plays back into our topic under the idea of I find a lot of times we overcollect when we are scratching itches.
Yes.
So,
We have a need to fill.
right, whether it be you're trying to fill out the categories in your collection, I need a chronograph, I need a diver, or you're saying I've always wanted, an explorer. Okay, let me get a Nevada Grinch Super Antarctic, and I'll just call it a day. And then you're like,
Yeah.
but I really want an explorer. It's like, well, then why are you? Why wouldn't you just save up every time you go to buy one of these watches and go for it?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I know Rolexes are hard to come by. I'm not a fool. It was just an example. But
Yeah, yeah, but there's also that caveat too, because that's the other thing. I realize in what I was saying is like, yeah, just hold up for the one thing you really want. There's some things you'll never get, so
now, yeah, now it
you
is
also have to
much,
be realistic that way
much
too.
harder than it used to be.
Yeah, yeah,
Right? It
you have to
used to be
be.
just save up, be friendly with the AD, work on a discount, pretend to do the thing where you're going to leave and hope they stop you. Like, it's not that anymore.
No, no. They're like, okay, you can leave now. I have 20 other people on
Next.
the list. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I don't know. But no, I think long story short, I think you can over collect. I think, this is an internal struggle for us all to kind of evaluate where we're at in our collections. And, that's why the collections, you move stuff in, you move stuff out, you switch stuff around. Our tastes are changing even as we get older. I mean, I have drastically different tastes now as a collector than I did, 10 years ago. And that is okay. I'm happy to do that. And I'm sure my collection will probably reflect a very different collection 10 years from now comparative to today. So those are types of things that change. I mean, we change. I look at my wardrobe now and I'm like, yeah, I'm wearing things that I would have punched myself in the face for 15 years ago. I'm like, you look like a dad now. Yeah, I am one. So this is why we wear stuff that we wear. It's like it changes. Your priorities and things change. So I think that's all good. That's what makes collecting fun. That's why it's exciting. And as watch brands continue to pump out new stuff, I think that's pretty amazing. It keeps us going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now, sort of on the other side of that is that building a collection is a bit of trial and error.
Yeah.
There's nobody who just buys 3 watches and is like, hey, that's it. I nailed it.
I've reached the peak. Yeah. No, you're absolutely 100% right. There's I don't know, man. I don't think you can hit it out of the park, on the first try. And it's funny, I always think about that one time that like I could have lived in blissful ignorance. When you ever meet that like one guy who just has a nice watch because like it's a thing to do, and
It's
it's
always
just
somebody's boss in my experience. It's always like one of my friends' bosses, like, oh yeah, my boss. He's a cool guy. He wears a speedy triple date. And that's it. That's all he's got.
yeah.
And I'm like,
And
man,
he's
he
just been
did
and
good. He
he's
did good on his first try.
and he's just been wearing it for like 15 years, and it's just
Yeah.
been like the watch every single day in, day out. Like, and he's never wanted something different or wanted more. It's just he's that's his watch. Like, I wish that I could go back and live in that blissful ignorance and just be like, the epitome representation of the one watch collector. You know what I mean? Like, that's the
Yes.
guy who's got the one watch collection. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
Funny aside about the whole triple date thing, that was a real story. One of my friends had a boss who had a speedy triple date, and to not show him up, my friend would not wear nicer watches than that to the office because he was in constant contact with him.
Oh yeah.
And he made a comment about it one day, and the guy made some stupid remark like, well, if you work hard, maybe you can get a nice watch like this one. Meanwhile, he has like a legit speedy like at home and like some other nice stuff. And he's like, "Oh my god, you
Oh
clown!"
no. And that's the thing, is like he set himself up for failure on that one, because like he can
Oh,
never go back. It's like, this whole time, boss, I've been wearing nicer watches than you. See, that's just a no-go. That's just bad territory. But I don't know, man. That's all I got. You got anything else?
no, that's probably a good place to stop. But just it's just something I think a lot of us do in our journey. We kind of look at the box, you look at yourself, you look at what you're hunting down these days, and you're just like, man, am I too far in?
Oh yeah, we're
Like,
all too far in at this point. I mean, look, here's the way that I gauge my too far inness. We started a podcast
yeah,
about watches. This is how too far gone we both are. Our spouses, our friends, they're just like, okay, go to the internet and you can talk watches amongst your other internet friends, because you're done here. Like, we can't keep having these conversations. So for me, whenever I think about, no, I'm just a passionate watch collector. No, you literally started an entire separate entity of your life that's dedicated to producing content for watches. That's how far in you are. Live with that.
I knew I was too far in when one of the local jewelers met my mother just by happenstance and
I
like
love this story.
fangirl to her.
I love this story so much when you tell it. It's so funny to me.
Have I ever told it on her?
I don't know if you have. I know you've told it to me
I
before in
can't
our
remember
close
either. I don't want to
friends.
repeat it if not, but either way, my mother does a lot of charity work, and she was at an event that happened to feature watches from a local jeweler and was showing them off. And the guy turns around to her and goes, "Do you know anything about watches?" And she jokingly says to the guy, "Well, my son is Brodinky." He was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah." And she was like astonished. She's like, "I'll be honest." She goes, it felt like I was Beyonce's mom. Like this dude was at a meltdown. And I was like, "Ma, it ain't that serious. Like I'm not I'm definitely not Beyonce."
Hey, but you know what? You are meme lord, so AKA number one. Dr. Jones, number one. There you go.
But yeah, still a funny story. A funny story that
Oh.
lives in my household next to my grandfather's macaroni story.
Still think about that every day. So every day since you told me that, I'm just like, yeah, that dude stirring the pot at the top. There we
Yeah,
go.
that was her
Always.
dad. I told that story. She was like, "Oh my god, it's so nice."
Yeah. There you go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for hanging out with us for yet another episode of the Rich Cheese Radio Podcast. We sincerely appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much for the engagement, the content, the sharing, and messaging us every single week when we drop a new episode. It's been a sincere pleasure. Thank you for tuning into episode 33. And we'll catch you in the next one.
Deuces.
Out.